My fiancée ghosted me and ran off with our wedding money. I replied by texting her mom, "Congrats on raising a thief." I never imagined I'd be typing something like that at 7 a.m., bleary-eyed and still half asleep, staring at an empty apartment where my fiancée, Jenna, should have been making coffee or at least leaving a note. But instead there was nothing, just the quiet hum of the refrigerator and the sinking realization that $32,000, every cent we pooled for our wedding, was gone. My first thought was that maybe this was a dream, a really cruel, hyper-realistic dream, the kind where you wake up and the anxiety doesn't stop for hours. I grabbed my phone, scrolled through our last texts, trying to find any hint, any breadcrumb or clue, and all I found was her last message, sent at 11:42 p.m. the night before. "Can't wait for tomorrow, smiley face, love you." And just like that, she evaporated. I called her, texted, nothing. I thought maybe she'd gone for a walk to clear her head, maybe some pre-wedding jitters. But when I opened a joint account app and saw it drain down to zero, my heart dropped into a pit I didn't know I had. I wanted to scream, cry, throw the phone against the wall, but I took a deep breath because this wasn't just emotional, it was criminal. And if I let my anger get the better of me, she'd already won. So I texted her mom, Linda, whose number I knew well from planning with Jenna over the last year. "Congrats on raising a thief." A part of me cringed at the sheer audacity of it, the pettiness. But another part of me felt a flash of satisfaction, a tiny spark of reclaiming control in the middle of chaos. It took a few hours to file the police report, to collect all the screenshots of our bank statements, the contracts with the venue, the caterer, the florist, every vendor we'd paid. Detective Rodriguez listened, took notes, and for the first time since discovering betrayal, I felt the faint stirrings of hope. The plan wasn't just to vent online or yell at her parents. It was to make sure justice actually happened, because Jenna wasn't just reckless. She was calculated. She booked a one-way ticket to Florida a week before the wedding while sipping champagne with me at the tasting for the cake. I still can't believe how meticulously she planned it. I called the police. They confirmed she left the state, and I had to sit there in disbelief, replaying every moment from the last 6 months, questioning every laugh, every "I love you," every time she said, "Don't worry, I've got it handled." Everything now had a tinge of betrayal. I called her parents again, Linda this time, and her voice was sweet, almost soothing, like nothing was wrong. "Mark, maybe she's just nervous," she said. "She'll come back. Girls get cold feet all the time." Cold feet? I almost laughed, except that laughing would have made me look insane. I said nothing at first, my voice quiet, deliberate. "Linda, she stole $32,000. She's gone. Not just out for coffee or a walk. Gone, and the money's gone. This isn't nerves. This is theft." Silence. Then the anger came back in her voice, sharp, defensive, protective of her daughter. "Don't you dare accuse her, Mark. She's a good girl. She'd never—" I cut her off. "She did. Linda, she did. And I have the proof." That was the moment I hung up and sent the text to her mother, because someone had to know the truth, and no sugarcoating would do justice. I started calling vendors next, wedding planner, florist, venue, photographers, caterer, explaining that the money had been taken, deposits lost. Most understood, some were sympathetic, some weren't. My emotional exhaustion grew, but I couldn't afford to crumble yet. Then the phone rang. Detective Rodriguez had news. She'd been flagged at the airport, boarding pass purchased for a flight out of state. She'd been planning her escape under my nose, even while we were making seating charts. That night, I didn't sleep. I stared at the ceiling, trying to wrap my mind around how someone you trust could orchestrate such a thing. Then the call started. First, Linda, screaming this time, not angry, but horrified that I'd reported her daughter. "Mark, please, she made a mistake. You can't ruin her life over money. She's scared. You're being vindictive." I listened for a moment, let her words hang in the air like a mist I couldn't cut through. And then, slowly, I said, "Linda, she didn't make a mistake. She stole $25,000 of my money. She planned it. She left me. That's not a mistake. That's a felony. She's accountable." I hung up. Then out of nowhere, her sister Mia showed up at my door, Tears streaked down her face, pleading, "Mark, we can fix this. She's not like this. Please, can't you just let it go? We'll pay you back. Somehow, just let her go. Please." I wanted to scream. I wanted to slam the door so hard I'd feel the release of all the anger simmering in my chest. Instead, I said, "Mia, she had your number. She could have called. She didn't. She stole my money. She left. You want to fix it? Tell her to get a lawyer." That was it. I closed the door. I didn't look back. The following week, calls came from her attorney, a sleek, overly smooth man named Jonathan Reese, pleading, cajoling, attempting every trick in the book: settlement offers, partial restitution, emotional appeals. I ignored them, every single one, directing them to the DA. I let them sweat. I let them feel the weight of their own actions. When I finally met with the assistant DA, Ms. Chun, she was meticulous, kind but firm, and immediately understood the severity of the situation. Every email, every receipt, every text showing her excitement about the wedding while simultaneously orchestrating theft. I handed it over. Every bit of premeditation laid bare. Meanwhile, social media started twisting the narrative, distant friends posting about toxic relationships and manipulative men, subtly tagging me, trying to frame Jenna as a victim. My friends tracked IP addresses back to her parents' home, screenshot in hand, which I sent to the DA to show the manipulation, the gaslighting attempts. Miss Chen nodded, said she'd use it. Weeks passed, tension building, the legal machine grinding slowly but surely. Then came the settlement conference, essentially a plea negotiation, and Mr. Reese arrived, confident, smug, her parents behind him, trying to sway the outcome. Miss Chun laid out the evidence: systematic theft, premeditated flight, the emotional and financial betrayal. She highlighted their attempts to intimidate me, the social media spin, the sisters' uninvited visit. She painted the picture clearly: a family enabling criminal behavior, attempting to rewrite reality. The judge, for what Miss Chun later told me, wasn't impressed. Eye rolls, raised eyebrows, no sympathy for their poor girl narrative. Jenna's choice was stark: go to trial and risk a harsher sentence, or accept the plea. She accepted. Felony fraud, full restitution of the $32,000, 90 days in county jail, 5 years probation with strict conditions, mandatory financial counseling. Her parents scrambled to gather the money within 48 hours, just enough to meet court requirements. Her tears, her sobbing, irrelevant. Justice wasn't about vengeance, but about accountability. Brenda called me one last time after the plea, voice trembling. "You destroyed her. I hope you're happy." I was quiet, calm, the weight of vindication settling in. Not happy in a cheerful way, but satisfied. I had stayed grounded, not allowed them to bully me, and the system worked. Finally, the emotional toll will take years to unravel, but knowing Jenna faces tangible consequences, knowing her family's sense of entitlement collided with reality, priceless. I'll get the money back through the court's escrow, slowly but surely. I'm considering a dog. Loyalty is simple, uncomplicated, honest. That's the kind of love and trust one wants moving forward. The first week after the plea felt unreal. I woke up in my apartment every morning half expecting to see Jen on the couch, laughing at some inside joke, or hear her voice calling from the kitchen. But there was only silence, punctuated by the occasional ding of a text or an email from the DA's office, confirming that the restitution had been deposited into escrow. Every time I checked, every time I saw that money marked as recovered, I felt a tiny spark of victory, but it was always overshadowed by the absurdity of what had happened. 5 years with someone, planning a life together, and in one night, it all evaporated. The emotional whiplash was brutal. I found myself replaying every single interaction, analyzing every "I love you" and every smile. Was it ever genuine, or had it been part of performance? I hated that question because I wanted to believe in her at some level. I wanted to remember her as the woman I loved, not the woman who had meticulously stolen from me and disappeared. Her parents, Brenda and Julian, tried everything. They called, emailed, even sent letters, handwritten, Sappy letters about how Jenna didn't mean any harm and how, Mark, you're too rigid and unforgiving. They painted me as cold, as cruel, as a man who crushed their daughter's spirit. I let the calls go to voicemail. I didn't respond. I didn't engage. It was surreal, having people argue that I was a villain when, in reality, I was the victim. The nerve, the gall. It made my blood boil, but I stayed calm. Every single interaction I had with them now felt like a test of restraint. The thing about betrayal is how it shifts your perception of the world. I started noticing little things that would have seemed normal before. A friend mentioning they were nervous about travel expenses, or seeing someone at the store with a wedding dress. Every little trigger sent my mind back to that Saturday morning, to the silence, to the hollow apartment, to the empty bank account. Work became my refuge. The office, the meetings, the endless spreadsheets became a way to distract myself from thinking about Jenna. I buried myself in projects, stayed late, took on extra responsibilities. Every dollar I spent or saved, I thought of as a step toward reclaiming some semblance of control over my life. And then social media exploded. People I hadn't spoken to in years started commenting on mutual posts, subtle digs at me, or direct support for her, claiming she snapped, or felt trapped, or was under enormous stress. I screenshot everything, every single post, and sent it to Miss Chun. I knew it would be used if the case ever came under scrutiny, and I wanted to ensure the narrative stayed truthful. It was exhausting, this constant vigilance, but the anger, cold and focused, kept me going. Mia, her sister, didn't give up either. She texted almost daily at first. "Mark, please let her go. Can't you just forgive?" She's scared. Mom and Dad are worried sick. Each text felt like a dagger, because she didn't see what Jenna had done. She didn't see that running off with $32,000 the night before the wedding wasn't a mistake. It was a choice. I started drafting responses in my head, but never sent them. Sometimes I wanted to write something brutally honest, a long message detailing every betrayal, every lie, every calculated move. Sometimes I wanted to call and scream at her, tell her that her fantasy of starting a new life when my money was over, and that her freedom came at a cost she'd never forget. But I didn't. I let the legal system handle it. And honestly, part of me took a quiet satisfaction in that. Months passed. Court dates came and went. Every time I entered the courthouse, I could feel the tension in the air, a mix of fear, anticipation, and judgment. Seeing Jenna, finally, in a holding area before court, was almost surreal. She looked small, scared, fragile. Not the confident woman who had orchestrated an elaborate theft. I wanted to look away, but I couldn't. Her eyes met mine for a fraction of a second, and I felt nothing but a hollow satisfaction. No joy, no vengeance, just a quiet recognition that consequences finally caught up to her. The courtroom itself was an odd theater. Her attorney tried every trick, painting her as a victim of pre-wedding anxiety and a momentary lapse of judgment, and her parents sat stiffly behind him, expressions etched with panic and frustration. I watched silently as Mischin laid out the timeline. The bank withdrawals, the flight, the lies, the texts, the empty apartment. Every piece of evidence clicked together like a puzzle, revealing the calculated plan Jenna had executed. The judge didn't take kindly to the defense's attempts to spin her crime as a simple mistake. His voice, calm but firm, cut through the room. A planned theft, executed over days, with deception and manipulation, is not a simple lapse in judgment. The court holds you accountable, Miss Vance. Jenna's face crumpled. I felt a strange mix of pity and vindication. Pity for the girl she was, the one who could have made better choices, and vindication that she couldn't wriggle out consequences. The sentence was delivered. 90 days in county jail, restitution of the full $32,000, 5 years of probation with strict conditions. Every time I replay that sentence in my head, I feel a strange calm. Not happiness, not relief, something steadier, a quiet closure that comes from knowing the world finally made sense. After the sentence, things quieted down. The calls from her family stopped. Finally, though I imagined the bitterness simmered in private. Social media settled. The posts framing me as a villain faded, replaced by mundane updates about weddings, careers, and life. I started sleeping normally again, longer stretches, deeper, restorative sleep. The apartment no longer felt haunted by her absence, but I didn't rush to fill it either. I wanted to preserve the space as a marker of endurance, a personal shrine to resilience. I even started volunteering on weekends, helping with local youth programs. It felt like a way to reclaim a sense of goodness in the world, to remind myself that trust and loyalty still existed outside betrayal. I've thought about Jenna, though, often, not with longing, not with bitterness, but with meticulous dissection of every choice she made. How did someone I loved so deeply plan something so cruel? Was it desperation, entitlement, ambition, or just a lack of empathy? These questions keep me awake some nights, but not with anxiety anymore. With curiosity, like a scientist examining a fascinating, tragic experiment. And sometimes, when I'm honest with myself, I acknowledge the quiet pride that comes from not letting her manipulation dictate the end of my life. I didn't crumble. I didn't beg for a reunion. I didn't forgive to appease anyone. I acted deliberately, calculatedly, to ensure justice, and in doing so, I reclaimed my own power. The money, now safely returned through escrow, feels almost symbolic, not wealth, not material gain, but validation, the tangible proof that I wasn't imagining betrayal, that the world still recognizes accountability. Every time I think about that, about the weeks of calls, the threats, the legal wrangling, the emotional toll, I realize something crucial. Revenge isn't about joy, it isn't about cruelty, it's about balance. And in this case, balance was finally restored. I'm learning to live with that balance. I've started small, redecorating the apartment, new furniture, small improvements that make the space feel mine again. I've started dating again cautiously, aware that trust isn't a light switch. It's a process, painstaking and deliberate. Every person I meet is filtered through layers of discernment, but also curiosity, the hope that not everyone is capable of the kind of betrayal I endured. And in this, I've discovered a strange sense of liberation, free from her lies, free from the burden of stolen money, free from the weight of a relationship that wasn't real. I can finally breathe, fully and unreservedly. Some nights, though, the emptiness creeps in, not longing for her, but the void of a life I thought I'd have. I think about the wedding that never happened, the photos that will never exist, the friends and family who gathered in anticipation, expecting to celebrate love. I don't dwell there long, but it's there, a shadow of loss, a reminder of vulnerability. And that's okay. I don't need to erase it. Acknowledging pain is part of moving forward, part of resilience, part of being human. I've also noticed something about myself. Patience, focus, a sense of clarity that only comes when life knocks you down and forces you to fight deliberately, strategically, morally. I've learned that anger, when harnessed, can be precise, powerful, and protective, that justice is not always poetic, but it's often satisfying in its quiet inevitability, that even the most elaborate plans of betrayal can unravel if confronted with persistence and truth. And perhaps most importantly, I've learned that people, even those we love and trust, are capable of cruelty, but also of accountability. Jenna had her chance to be accountable. The courts ensured she finally was. It's not a perfect ending. I won't pretend that the nights of replaying every betrayal and every lie are gone. I won't pretend that the trauma isn't lingering in subtle ways, small anxieties, hesitations, second guesses. But the certainty of justice, of right being acknowledged, steadies me. And that's enough for now. That, and the quiet joy of being able to rebuild a life unshackled from lies. I can move forward, cautious but open, aware but resilient, and slowly, deliberately, reclaim the trust one thought was lost.